She lost custody. 3 weeks later, he disappeared. At first, everyone thought he just ran. But why would a man fight that hard for his daughter, and then vanish without a word? The mother said she was shocked. Her own mother said she was praying. But someone in that same house had proof, and they'd been sitting on it the whole time. A phone was recording conversations they thought no one would hear. And when police finally heard what was on it, it wasn't just one person they came for. Because behind this custody battle was something darker than revenge. Something planned. And when the truth came out, even the people closest to them couldn't believe what the mother and daughter had done. All for one child. Before the courtrooms, before the police reports, there was just a couple trying to figure life out. Chloe Washington and Ronald Hill. They met the way most young people do in small cities like Augusta, Georgia. Not at some big event, not on an app. Just a mutual friend, a cookout, a spark. Chloe was 22 then, working part-time at a daycare, with a quiet laugh and a soft spot for kids. Ronald, 2 years older, had just started working in IT at a local logistics firm. He was calm, responsible, and not the type to chase drama. They moved fast, but not recklessly. Ronald took his time meeting Chloe's family, especially her mother, Sheila Washington. Sheila had opinions, always had. But at first she seemed warm enough. She welcomed Ronald, cooked for him, asked about his job, even called him a decent young man, a big deal coming from someone like her. When Chloe found out she was pregnant, they weren't married, but they weren't scared either. Ronald stepped up immediately. He was there for every appointment, every craving, every ultrasound. When their daughter, Layla, was born, he held her like she was the most delicate thing in the world. They didn't have a lot, but they made it work. A rented townhouse, rotating work shifts, hand-me-downs, and a shared parenting rhythm that, for a time, made sense. Sheila became a regular fixture in their lives. She babysat when Chloe went back to work. She helped with meals, laundry, late-night bottles. Her presence was strong, sometimes overbearing, but useful. And Chloe, still adjusting to motherhood, leaned heavily on her. The cracks didn't start with cheating or screaming matches. They started with exhaustion, missed shifts, Chloe quitting jobs without notice, Ronald working longer hours, Sheila whispering in Chloe's ear that she was doing too much while Ronald got to play the hero. Arguments turned personal. Little things became loud things. Chloe accused Ronald of acting single. Ronald accused Chloe of being reckless with their money. Neither was entirely wrong or entirely right. Still, for Layla's sake, they tried. Counseling didn't help. Friends took sides. Even Sheila, once neutral, began referring to Ronald as that man instead of his name. Eventually, after one final boiling argument that ended with Chloe packing bags and Ronald slamming a door, it was done. Chloe moved back in with Sheila. Layla, still too young to understand the tension, bounced between homes on a loose arrangement. Nothing was decided in court yet, but the split was real. And for the first time since they met, Ronald and Chloe were no longer a we. The way it used to be was over. Custody court doesn't move fast. It drags. Filing dates, evaluations, mediation sessions that feel more like interrogations. And for Chloe Washington, the process chipped away at her by the week. Ronald Hill had filed first, formally. His petition cited concerns about home stability and emotional safety. It wasn't nasty. He didn't throw insults. He simply stated facts. Chloe had changed jobs 3 times in 7 months. She'd pulled Layla from daycare without notice, then left her with a friend who had her own CPS record. More than once, Ronald arrived for his weekend pickup to find Layla still in pajamas, her hair uncombed, eating dry cereal from a cup. Chloe called it just being human. The court didn't see it that way. Ronald, on the other hand, came in like a blueprint for responsible fatherhood. He had a stable job with documented income, a quiet rental home with a dedicated room for Layla, a daily routine, even character witnesses, one of them being his supervisor at work, the other a neighbor who saw Layla every morning, backpack on, shoes tied, heading to school on time. Ronald wasn't flashy, but he was consistent. Chloe's attorney tried. She argued that a few bad weeks shouldn't define motherhood, that Chloe loved her child, that this wasn't about danger, just disorganization. But under cross-examination, Chloe's own words painted her into a corner. She admitted to stopping her anxiety medication cold turkey, claimed she didn't trust daycare anymore because she had a feeling, refused to say where she was working now, citing privacy. Then came Sheila. She sat in the courtroom with her arms folded, eyes sharp. When the judge referenced over-involvement from extended family that may be disrupting Chloe's independence, Sheila audibly scoffed. The judge noticed. The final blow came from a custody evaluator's report. Child shows stronger behavioral regulation and academic consistency in father's care. Maternal home noted to have high emotional volatility and irregular supervision. The ruling was clear. Full physical custody to Ronald Hill. Legal custody shared, but primary placement with the father. Chloe would get supervised weekend visits for the first 90 days, then a review. When the judge read the decision aloud, Chloe didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat, frozen. Beside her, Sheila's jaw clenched so tight you could see the muscle move under her skin. After court, Ronald didn't gloat. He just walked out, holding the paperwork like it weighed more than his daughter ever had. At home, Chloe crumbled. That night, she didn't speak to anyone. She laid on the couch, unmoving. Sheila stood in the hallway, phone in hand, staring. The silence between them was louder than any argument they'd ever had. To Chloe, the court had taken her child. To Sheila, they had taken her legacy. And neither of them was ready to accept it. Moving back home wasn't part of the plan. Now, at 27, she was back, without Layla. And nothing about the return felt safe. Sheila had made space in the back bedroom, same pink walls from Chloe's high school days, same wooden dresser with one drawer that stuck. Nothing had changed, except how it felt. She should be here too, Sheila muttered on Chloe's first night back, pulling the sheets tight on the guest bed. That child belongs with her mother. Not him. At first, Chloe said nothing, but the silence didn't mean peace. It meant pressure. Every sigh Sheila made was loud. Every comment was sharp-edged. You didn't fight hard enough. You trusted the wrong people. You let them label you unstable like some kind of addict. It never stopped. By week 2, Chloe had started sleeping late, keeping the curtains closed, barely speaking. Her phone stayed off for hours. Sheila hovered, part caregiver, part interrogator. Even breakfast came with a side of bitterness. You gonna sit there all day while he raises your daughter like she's his alone? Chloe tried to speak up once, said she needed space, said she needed to think. Sheila just laughed. What you need is to wake up. The courts don't help mothers no more. They help the man that checks all the boxes. You think that's fairness? In the middle of it all was Isaiah, 17, senior in high school. Quiet by nature, invisible by design. His headphones stayed on, but his ears were always open. He didn't get involved. He'd learned long ago that arguing with his mother was a losing game. But now, the arguments weren't just loud. They were layered. He started hearing phrases like, "They made their decision, now we'll make ours," and "Ain't no way I'm letting that man take what's mine." It was just talk. Until it wasn't. One evening, Chloe sat in the hallway scrolling through her messages. Her phone buzzed. A new picture from Ronald. It was Layla, dressed in a pale pink tutu and white tights, standing in a dance studio with her hands clasped over her head. Her first ballet class. Chloe stared at the photo. She zoomed in. Layla's smile was wide, 2 bottom teeth missing. She hadn't even known she was starting ballet. From the kitchen, Sheila called out, "What's that?" Chloe didn't answer. She just locked the screen, placed the phone face down, and sat there with her eyes open, but not really seeing anything at all. The photo from ballet class changed something. Not instantly, but it settled in Chloe like a slow poison. The realization that life was moving on without her. Layla was laughing somewhere else, in a world that didn't need her anymore. A world where Ronald got to play both roles, provider and parent. She didn't tell Sheila about the photo. Sheila had a way of knowing when things weren't sitting right. "You thought he'd play fair, didn't you?" she said one morning over burnt toast. "Thought you could appeal, show them you've changed, get your baby back." Chloe didn't respond. Sheila leaned in, lowering her voice. "You'll never get her back like this, Chloe. Not through court. That man's got the system on his side. Money, a schedule, a clean record, and a sweet little lie for every judge he meets." Chloe rubbed her temple. "I can't do this again." Sheila scoffed. "You can't or you won't. Because if it were me, that man wouldn't be a problem for long." The room fell silent. Chloe looked up. "What are you saying?" Sheila sat back. "I'm saying if the court failed you, then maybe it's time we stop playing by their rules." It wasn't the first time Sheila had hinted at things, but this was the first time it landed like a threat disguised as advice. Isaiah was in his bedroom. The walls in Sheila's house didn't hold much privacy, especially not between the kitchen and the back hallway. He'd been hearing pieces of their conversations for days. But now, something about his mother's tone made him open the voice memos app on his phone. He didn't start recording out of courage. He started out of fear. Fear of what this would become. Chloe's voice cracked in the background. "You want me to hurt him?" "I want you to stop letting him hurt you," Sheila replied. "The system failed us. Maybe it's time we handle it our way." Isaiah stopped the recording. He sat on his bed, staring at the screen. 29 seconds. That's all it captured. But it was enough to make his stomach turn. He didn't know what they meant exactly. He didn't want to know. But he did know this. It wasn't just talk anymore. And for the first time, the idea of Ronald being in danger no longer felt impossible. It felt like a clock ticking somewhere in the background, and no one else seemed to hear it. By mid-March, Chloe had gone quiet. No more outbursts, no more pacing around the house. She started brushing her hair again, even stepped outside once for air. To Sheila, it looked like healing. But Isaiah noticed something else, a stillness that didn't feel right. Then came the text. "Hey, I want to talk. Just us. About Layla." She sent it to Ronald on a Wednesday morning. Simple, calm. She waited 3 hours before he replied. "Where?" "McMillan Park. Maybe Saturday. Just talk. I'm not trying to start anything." Ronald said yes. When Chloe told Sheila, her mother didn't ask questions. She simply nodded. "Wear something decent. And don't sound weak." Saturday came. Chloe left around 4:15 p.m. in her old Altima. Isaiah watched from the living room window. Sheila left 15 minutes later in her own car. No explanation, no conversation. Just keys, purse, and a silent exit. Ronald arrived at the park first, just like always. Punctual, responsible. He texted her to say he'd parked near the fountainside. Chloe replied, "Actually, can we meet by the old community center instead? Too many people here. I don't want this to feel like a scene." It was a shift, but not enough to raise alarm. The community center was just a few blocks away. An older brick building with a lot behind it, half paved and always empty on weekends. Ronald pulled in, parked near the side exit, and waited. Chloe arrived 5 minutes later, alone. They spoke for about 10 minutes, just the two of them. No raised voices, no threats, nothing to make anyone nearby suspicious. Not that anyone was. The lot was empty. What happened next, no one saw. No cameras, no witnesses, just two people in a conversation that started about parenting and never finished. By 7:45 p.m., Ronald's phone stopped responding. His location pin froze, then disappeared. Chloe returned home just after 8:30. Sheila arrived minutes later. Neither of them said a word. Chloe took a shower. Sheila made tea. Isaiah sat in his room, phone in hand, replaying the 30-second recording from days earlier. Something in his chest felt heavy. He didn't know yet that Ronald hadn't made it home. But by midnight, Ronald's sister had already called the police. He never missed a good-night call with Layla. And tonight, the phone never rang. Ronald Hill had never missed a bedtime call. Even during the custody battle, even when Chloe wouldn't pick up, he still found a way to FaceTime his daughter every night at 8 p.m. sharp. Layla was used to it, her father's face lighting up the screen, asking about school, reminding her to brush her teeth. That Saturday night, the call never came. By 8:30, his sister was texting. By 9 o'clock, she was calling. By 10:15, she'd filed a missing person report. Police in Augusta didn't treat it as urgent at first. Grown men go off the radar sometimes. Maybe he needed space. Maybe there'd been an argument. Maybe he left on his own. But by Sunday morning, Ronald's car was found, parked behind the old community center near a cracked, overgrown fence. Driver's seat empty. Phone left behind. Keys gone. Now, it was serious. Sheila didn't post anything. She didn't speak much either. When Chloe cried in the kitchen, Sheila just stared. When Isaiah asked if she thought Ronald was okay, she said, "He'll turn up." But Isaiah was no longer just guessing. That recording, the one from days ago, now felt loaded. Sheila's words, Chloe's voice cracking, the way the meeting had moved from a public park to a near-abandoned lot. He couldn't unhear it, couldn't unfeel it. That night, after everyone had gone quiet, Isaiah pulled out an old flash drive from his backpack. He connected it to his phone, opened the file app, and transferred every voice recording he had. Not just one. He had 4. They weren't long, but together they painted a conversation that didn't sound like grief. It sounded like intention. He didn't show anyone. Not yet. He just labeled the file 3 days before and slid the flash drive into a sock drawer behind a pair of unworn church shoes. On Monday, Ronald's job officially listed him as missing. His family stopped calling Chloe. Police started checking traffic cams. Detectives visited the community center. No answers, no footage, just silence. And in that silence, a family began to fracture. Not just Ronald's, but the one living under Sheila Washington's roof, too. It didn't take long for the timeline to fall apart. Detectives pulled traffic footage from nearby intersections around McMillan Park and the old community center. The community lot itself had no working cameras, but a utility pole 1 block over, near an old liquor store, caught just enough. At 6:12 p.m., a silver Altima passed through the intersection. Chloe's car. At 6:27 p.m., an older tan Toyota, registered to Sheila, Washington, drove the same route. Neither vehicle returned on camera until well after 8 p.m. The footage didn't prove guilt, but it raised a question. Why were both women in that area on the same night Ronald Hill vanished? By Thursday, a detective and a uniformed officer knocked on Sheila's door. Chloe answered. Her voice was shaky, but polite. She told them she and Ronald had spoken briefly that night and parted ways with no issue. Said she went straight home afterward and stayed in. Can anyone confirm that? One detective asked. Chloe hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the back hallway where Isaiah's door was shut. Just my family. My brother was here. My mom got back a little after me. The detective made a note. Did she know you were meeting Ronald? Chloe answered too quickly. No. Sheila, standing just out of frame in the hallway, stepped forward. We already told everything to the other officer that called. We have nothing else to add. The tone shifted. The detective thanked them and left. But as soon as the door closed, Sheila turned to Chloe. Don't go offering anything that wasn't asked for. They're digging. Isaiah heard it all. From the hallway, from the kitchen, from his own door. Always slightly open now. That night, Sheila came to his room. No knocking, no warning. Just opened the door. You hear anything, you don't repeat it. You're under my roof, and what happens in this house stays in this house. You understand? Isaiah nodded, not because he agreed, but because it was safer than not. Sheila stared at him a second longer before walking out. Isaiah Washington hadn't slept properly in days. He couldn't. Not with Chloe crying through the walls some nights, and Sheila pacing the hallway like she was waiting on something to blow. Every sound in that house felt louder now. The microwave beep, the hallway creak, the front door lock clicking into place. By Wednesday morning, Isaiah had made his choice. He didn't text anyone, didn't call. Just slipped the flash drive into his backpack, zipped it behind a biology textbook, and left for school. He didn't go to the principal. He went to Ms. Galen, his literature teacher. The one teacher who noticed when he didn't talk much. He walked in at the end of first period, eyes low, and said, I need to show you something, but you have to promise not to tell my mom. She closed the door and nodded. Isaiah pulled out the USB. That same afternoon, law enforcement was alerted. A school resource officer placed the call directly. Within hours, 2 detectives were sitting in a soundproof room listening to fragments of truth pieced together from 4 short recordings. The first file opened with Sheila's voice. That man got lucky in court. He won't be lucky again. The second. You gonna sit here while he raises your baby like you never existed? The third was worse. He won't be around to take anything else. Trust me. There was no mention of a weapon, no confession to the act. But the intent was unmistakable. Investigators didn't wait. That evening, they brought Chloe in for formal questioning. She tried to hold herself together, until the officer across from her played the third clip aloud. The moment she heard her mother's voice again, something in her cracked. She started shaking, then sobbing, then talking. She admitted she lured Ronald to the community center, said she just wanted to scare him, said Sheila followed them there with something in her purse. She didn't know what at first, said things got out of hand, that she panicked, that she didn't know what to do with the body, that Sheila took care of everything else. Detectives asked what she meant. Chloe paused, then whispered, My mom said we had to protect ourselves now. that it was either him or us. By nightfall, Sheila was taken into custody. She didn't cry. She didn't ask why. She just stared straight ahead and said, "You people don't understand how far a mother will go to fix what the court breaks." But Isaiah understood. He understood far more than he ever wanted to. The news broke just before noon on a Friday. Chloe Washington and her mother, Sheila, were both booked on charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Bail was denied. Police, acting on Chloe's partial confession, searched the wooded perimeter behind a long-abandoned community outreach building, once used by Sheila's former church. It took less than 2 hours to find the grave. Ronald's body was partially wrapped in a mildewed tarp, buried shallow beneath soft, disturbed earth. No effort had been made to hide it well, just a rush job done in panic. Autopsy reports confirmed blunt force trauma to the head. No gun, no knife, just something heavy, fast, and final. Chloe pleaded guilty within a week. No trial, no deal. Just a closed courtroom and a single trembling statement. "I was angry, but I never wanted him dead. I didn't stop her. That's my fault. I didn't stop her." Sheila refused to speak in court. Her attorneys fought to suppress the audio recordings, claiming they were taken without consent in a private home. But Georgia's one-party consent law crushed that defense immediately. Her voice was hers. Her words were damning. And to the grand jury, that was enough. She was indicted and bound over for trial. Meanwhile, Isaiah, the one thread holding truth together, was removed from the home and placed into temporary protective custody. The Department of Family and Children's Services cited emotional endangerment and psychological trauma. He didn't argue. He didn't even ask to say goodbye. He'd already said enough. The only message he left behind was a small post-it note tucked into the corner of his nightstand drawer, beneath a half-empty pack of gum. "I did the right thing. I hope that counts for something." Ronald's family held a second memorial service once the body was returned. Layla Hill was 5 years old when everything changed. Too young to understand words like custody or conspiracy, but old enough to feel absence. Her father stopped calling. Her mother stopped visiting. And her world, once split between two houses, became a single unfamiliar home with a new guardian. Ronald's sister, Adrienne Hill, was granted full custody within a month of Chloe's sentencing. She moved Layla into a quiet neighborhood outside Augusta, far from the community center, far from the school she once knew. The court believed it was for the best, a fresh start. Layla was placed in therapy, twice a week, play-based sessions. No mention of death yet, just conversations about feelings, pictures of families, drawings with missing faces. Chloe Washington was sentenced to 28 years after pleading guilty to second-degree murder. Her courtroom confession had been enough to reduce her charge, but not enough to save her future. She will be eligible for parole in her 50s. Sheila Washington's trial ended differently. Jurors took just under 5 hours to return a guilty verdict on all counts. She showed no emotion when the judge read her sentence: life without parole. Her last words in court were cold. "I was protecting my daughter." That's not murder. That's motherhood. Public opinion didn't agree, but it didn't fully unite either. Some saw Sheila as the true manipulator, the bitter matriarch who pushed her daughter past the edge. Others blamed Chloe, a grown woman who made a decision and wanted pity only after the damage was done. Still others questioned whether the system had failed long before the crime ever happened. But in nearly every comment thread, one name kept resurfacing: Isaiah, the boy who recorded the truth, the teen who gave up the only family he had left to stop something worse from continuing. As for Layla, she was granted supervised visits with her mother once a month. Chloe cried the first time they let her hold her daughter's hand again. Layla didn't cry. She just asked, "Are you going to come home next time?" There was no answer to that. The case was over. But the trauma wasn't. It lived in the quiet moments, in a little girl's drawings, in a brother's silence, and in a family photo that could never be taken again.